West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Michael Steele, I have to start with you because you know all those cats that I just played on that reel spreading their disinformation. The thing that strikes me is, one, they knew at the time that what they were saying was untrue. They were saying it to placate Donald Trump. And two, it's now evidence against all of them, whether criminal or in a trial, but evidence that their words caused death and destruction.
Yeah, that's the part that they can't walk away from. You can, right, talk about unity and dance around a lot of noise, but the reality of it is, we listened to you for the run-up of this election. We listened to you on election day. We heard what you said after the election about it being stolen. So yeah, this is Exhibit A against all of them for contributing to what happened on January 6th. You cannot walk that back. And so I think, the smart political thing to do in the face of all of this, which we know they won't, is to say, my bad, we got that wrong. We were wrong about this. But yet, and still, they're still engaged in it. You still have this level of noise out here from some that continue to perpetuate the lie. And so whether it's in the form of a Taylor Greene and her and what she's saying, and the fact that McConnell seems, befuddled about how to deal with it, or anyone else, it all feeds the continual narrative that the GOP has bought into what Donald Trump started out with about this election. They refuse to move off of it, and they're going to ride and die with it.
It's still so staggering just to hear you say it all out loud and put it that way. Claire McCaskill, I keep thinking that what this reporting and this recreation of the timeline erases any doubt that the Republic, and I hate to use this word in the gutter because it's not nice to gutters, but they're in the toilet bowl with this muck, this dirty underbelly of American political society. And when you look at where the investigation's going and where the arrests are, they are arresting members of the Proud Boys. They are moving toward investigating and perhaps charging the conspiracy and perhaps more serious charges of sedition. So that reel, the people that were listening are the people that stormed the Capitol raising Trump flags. It erases any doubt about where the conversation was between. It was between Republicans and the president and white supremacists, Proud Boys on the other side who carried out the crime that they thought they were directed to carry out.
Mitch McConnell made a cool calculation in the days after the election. Mm-hmm. He knew what Donald Trump was going to try to do. He knew it was wrong. He knew it was a lie, but he was trying to hold power in the Senate. Everything he did in those 77 days was all about, up until the Georgia runoff election, was all about winning those Senate seats in Georgia. He thought he was in a boxed canyon. And he thought if he placated Trump, Trump would do what they needed him to do to promote those candidates in Georgia and get them across the finish line. Of course, Trump didn't care ultimately about that. All he cared about was himself. So it was one of the few times you see Mitch McConnell make a very bold mistake when it came to a political calculation. If he just would have done the right thing, the outcome would not have been any different. But maybe he could have saved some lives in the process. They were all just looking the other way, hoping it would go away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mike, that's some of the most stunning part of the new reporting is this window into what Claire just described quite accurately, Mitch McConnell's calculations and his staff trying to sort of hold the line on those two Senate runoffs. That backfired spectacularly, and McConnell lost control of his caucus anyway.
There was a notion amongst top Republicans and aides to the president and people who were working on his legal team that at some point the president was going to give up and that he wasn't going to take this far. Now, I find that a bit surprising because I think that if you looked at the president's pattern of behavior throughout his 4 years in office, to see that he would question an election to the ends of the earth was not surprising, at least to me. But that seems to have been a theme, that they thought that the norms were going to kick in. They thought that the president was going to act like a typical president who has lost an election. And that just never happened. And as we wrote in this piece, almost 8,000 words, anchored by our colleague, Jim Rutenberg, the events build on themselves from the middle of November with the early allegations about Dominion, the specious claims about foreign interference in the voting systems and all the gobbledygook from Giuliani. They build and build and build on each other until that final chapter, that bookend being January 6th, the incident that happens at the Capitol as the election is being certified. And you see how the president cooked up these doubts and feelings amongst his base, and the result being obviously this, ugly insurrection.
It is Tuesday, the 2nd of February of 2021. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. It always has, and it always will. Hey, the new Biden administration is still being obstructed by Mitch McConnell acting like he's still majority leader. What the hell? Lindsey Graham is still the leader of committees? How is that possible? He's not in the majority anymore. I know it's some sort of weird parliamentarian thing because Kamala is the deciding vote. But notice how they never relinquish an inch of power, even when they've lost by millions and millions and millions and millions. It's just astounding. The brazenness of it. And you speak to their voters, the ones that say, it's okay to storm the Capitol because they were trying to steal the election from Trump. They. All right. Well, I just want to make it very clear that when a hostile foreign power looked to America and tried to decide what part of America, what part of the mindset of America, what spectrum of the political spectrum would be more amenable to brainwashing and destroy democracy itself, and no other group except for GOP voters were susceptible. Yeah, there were some that sort of had, maybe part of their DNA, that kind of weird mindset, who were registered Democrats. But, it is astounding how a whole freaking party has decided, America, screw it. Black and brown people getting things that we have, that doesn't make me better. We don't want that. And so they were willing to assassinate elected officials because they didn't get their way. And then they call themselves patriots. Well, they fly the flag. They spout off about what it is to be a loyal American, and they have no idea what it is. They've appropriated the term. Sort of like how the Nazis appropriated the swastika from ISIS. I'm just saying. You know, completely diametrically opposed ideas in the cosmos. But, that rolling thing just appealed to the Teutonic mindset. They weren't even Teutonic. They were just Germanic. They took on the Teutonic thing later because they appropriated that too. Jeez. Just goes on and on and on. And now we need to make it stop. There was a bit of concern, of course, when Joe Biden, our president, agreed to a sit-down with 10 GOP leaders to wrangle about the COVID stimulus bill. Quite a bit of concern on our side that here we go again. We're going to let them get their $680 billion, whatever it was, a third of what we need. They think that we're highballing the thing, and they have to lowball. It's the way that dealers deal. It's the way that wranglers, they're players. Anyway, so we're supposed to now come up somewhere above that 600 and some billion, almost 700 billion. Okay. We're supposed to come up from that somewhere, and then they're going to make us come down again, and then we're supposed to try to get them to inch back up. And I think that Joe told him, F you. Thanks for coming. We'll meet again. And he didn't give them what they wanted, even though he took the meeting. All right. And I love the pincher move that Joe used. Coming at Joe Manchin with AOC on the left and Jim Justice on the right. Wow. That's how someone who knows how to work the legislator works. And he's on our side. So let's make that clear. He's not doing it in any malevolent way. It's actually benevolent. But I know that it's already being questioned. The skeptics are questioning what's his intention? Is he really benevolent? He must be like a satanic pedophile baby eater. We are all satanic pedophile baby eaters, according to Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I guess Squeaky Berbert, too. I know it's Bobert, but, the OE in German is brr, brr. So she's Squeaky Berbert to me. And so we have these people in there, and there's others that might be hiding their more extreme beliefs a little bit better. And that is a concern. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, of course, I'm sure everyone's heard of this, and if you've seen the whole Instagram taping, I would suggest you do that. Spoke about what it is to be a sexual abuse survivor, and then being the target of a riotous, seditious, insurrectionist mob. And we're not talking like a couple of people. We're talking thousands. Stormed and seized the capital of the United States. And now, weeks out, we're just acting like, that's just normal. People get threatened all the time. She had to cower in the bathroom. That's the way democracy works. No, it isn't. That's not how democracy works. In a sane democracy, these scofflaws would have been rounded up at the moment and thrown into jail until we could figure out what the hell to do, and they don't get released on bond. There's no bond for someone committing an insurrection. Please. Or they have to figure out, some of them were just in the crowd. I don't care if some of them were just in the crowd. That's how crimes are committed, by the crowd. And, I guess they're going to go a regular way of attending to a tragedy as such. They're going to Lieutenant Calley this. Not that Lieutenant Calley should be absolved of his murderous intent and actions. But he was just following orders now, wasn't he? And who gave those orders? They were left unaccounted. Now, maybe a slap on the wrist. Maybe sit at a desk for a little bit longer than they wanted to. But those upper criminals, the criminals in the upper ranks, they usually not held to account. And they're trying to do the same thing here. Guantanamo? Yeah, everybody saw the contract guards and the underlings, the lower ranked military take the brunt of the crime and the punishment of it. But they were just following orders. Who gave those orders? We all know. They weren't really held to account, were they? So you couple that with 10 years of obstruction with the Grim Reaper. Not being held to account. And now we won 81 million, 82 million to his 71, almost 10 million more. Oh, 74. Who cares? It's still, almost 10 million more. Let's just play with that for a little bit. But we don't have a mandate. We somehow are not able to take the committee heads of those. I don't get it. I mean, I do. Because they do know how to manipulate parliamentary procedure to their advantage, twist it and strangle it, and then as soon as we try to reconciliation, you can't do that. Well, you know what? You forced us to do it, and now you're going to suffer the consequences, and the American people want it. Go big or go home. Yes. Hey, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? At the top, that was showing that new reporting has revealed the careful coordination of pro-Trump groups and the White House over the Capitol insurrection. And that's going to be even more profound as we get closer to the trial. Yeah, I like Trump's new lawyers. That's right. That's not Tom Hagen there, I got to tell you. That mob lawyer is not Tom Hagen. On the rest of the menu, the Hawaii GOP chair resigned after the party sent tweets defending adherents of the QAnon conspiracy theory. They quit. California-based multi-level marketing business LuLaRoe, or is it LuLaRoe, will pay $4.75 million fine to settle a pyramid scheme lawsuit by Washington State. And Jonestown survivor Representative Jackie Speier urged President Biden to declare white supremacy and violent extremism a threat to national security. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Turkish police detained 159 people for protesting an Erdogan-appointed university head, and death threats against an 11-year-old environmental activist. Outrages, Colombia. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of that chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, There is also a link to our Patreon page. If you could, please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. And possibly, maybe, if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds our way once a month, we have the proven ability of stretching those dollars beyond compare. And you know that if you can't measure something, it doesn't exist. At least on the quantum level. At least that's what I've heard. But we are able to stretch those dollars. Then we pay our bills. And surprisingly, that allows us to fly under the radar and continuing being the kind of resistance radio that we have to be. Because these damn neo-Nazis are not going to take over America. We will not allow it. And we have you to thank for allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended, even textually. Not just originalism. Textualism has as much credence, well, as the Federalist Society, and we hate them all. Anyway, thank you for allowing us to fulfill that civic duty. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that as well. Thank you, Tom. I take care of me because I have to. I am me. And who am I? I am at Justice Putnam on Twitter. And if you follow me there, I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. And then I post that up on Twitter and other social media platforms. And we all know who they are. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, one day I'm going to read the phone book. Do people still get a phone book? No, yeah. Well, that's good practice for radio voices is to read the phone book. A lot of people made quite a career, and that's, they didn't start there necessarily, but it's like jumping jacks. It is. Okay, enough of that. Let's get into some actual curated news here because we're in deep doo-doo. It's not hyperbole. I'm not joking when I say that a hostile foreign power looked at America and tried to figure out what part of America would be most susceptible to brainwashing. And it's not a geographical location. It's a mindset. And that mindset is pretty darn prevalent within the whole of the GOP. Is it lack of critical thinking skills? Is it because of greed? It's any number of things, but I think grievance is probably a great motivator for, well, shall we say, the unevolved mind. Am I being a coastal elite? Hell no. I'm too far inland right now. Well, you would probably still say I'm a coastal elite, but still. For an old surfer, I'm not anywhere near the coast. I'm an elitist, but that's different. All right, this comes out of the Associated Press by Audrey McAvoy, the chairperson of the Hawaii Republican Party, has resigned after a senior party member used an official Twitter account to send tweets defending adherents of the QAnon conspiracy theory. Shirlene Ostroff stepped down to, quote, allow the party to recover from the controversy and focus on finding excellent candidates and fighting for policies that improve the quality of life for Hawaii's hard-working families, the party said in a statement. Her resignation took effect on Sunday. Ostroff said the party has been redefining itself since President Joe Biden was inaugurated. It's so great to be able to call the elected official who sits in the Oval Office president again. Because the last one, well, there were many reasons why we here at Netroots Radio were not allowed to use the P word when applied to that guy. And not just because it was within the Netroots Radio style manual, but because it just felt terrible. It made us want to throw up in our voice on air. Throw up in our throats. We don't want to do that, not on air. Ostroff continued, we have a stark but important choice to make. Either we rededicate ourselves to our Constitution and continue to defend and uphold our best American institutions, lady, and traditions. Traditions, what are those? Or we get distracted by conspiracy theories and social media wars, the statement quoted her as saying. Well, she's right. So I guess there are some people within the Republican Party that, locking brown and black kids up in icebox baby gulags wasn't enough. That wasn't Looney Tune enough. But this other stuff, yeah, well, when they got guns right in your faces. And it depends on how many faces you have, too. Two-faced, three-faced. A lot of two-faced people had guns pointed in their face. And they were on their side. That's how two-faced they were. Edwin Boyett, who had served as the state party's vice chairman for communications, resigned on January 24th, one day after posting the tweets on the Hawaii GOP account. QAnon followers advocate a conspiracy theory rooted in the baseless belief that former P-word Donald Trump, I still don't want to call him the P-word, please. All right? And there's a reason why we call it the P-word, because it has a double entendre. Well, he was fighting deep state conspiracies and a cabal of Satan-worshipping cannibals operating a child sex trafficking ring out of the basement of Comet Pizza. And they even sent one of their guys to go over there and shoot up Comet Pizza, and they couldn't find the basement. Not because it was difficult, and they had it hidden so well. There isn't a basement at Comet Pizza. Some QAnon believers were among the mob that stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6, as lawmakers were counting electoral college votes validating Biden's victory, and others were actual militia. Military-trained assassins going in there trying to find AOC. I wanted to mention about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her recollection of January 6th and how fearful she was, and people really, actually feared for their lives because their lives were actually threatened. They built a goddamn gallows with a noose. That was no prop. Let's be clear. But then you got people like Glenn Greenwald and Michael Tracy yucking it up. She wasn't hit. She's just being too emotional. And yet Michael Tracy went on and on and on when, a frail 78-year-old woman bumped up against him one time. And he went on for weeks about how he was assaulted. Anonymous staff at the Associated Press bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. The California-based multi-level marketing business LuLaRoe is paying $4.75 million to settle allegations from the Washington State Attorney General's office that it operated as a pyramid scheme. LuLaRoe sells leggings and other clothing to a network of independent retailers who can recruit other retailers to sell the company's products. Oh, like Amway. Attorney General Bob Ferguson sued the company and its executives 2 years ago, saying they deceived people about how profitable it was to be a LuLaRoe retailer. While two people at the top made millions from 2016 to 2019, thousands of others were left with debt and unsold product, which they could not return due to the company's complex and misleading refund policy, the Attorney General said. He also said that $4 million of the settlement will be distributed to about 3,000 Washington state residents who were recruited to the company. Every Washington retailer who lost money under LuLaRoe's pyramid structure will receive restitution, his office said in a news release. The company denied wrongdoing in a consent decree filed late yesterday in King County Superior Court in Seattle, but the agreement prohibits LuLaRoe from operating a pyramid scheme, as if that should be a law that has to be stated, and requires it to be more transparent with retailers. Don't mislead them about how to refund the product they'll never be able to sell. And among other things, it must publish an income disclosure statement that accurately details how much retailers might earn, as if that has to be stated too. Ferguson said LuLaRoe's structure violated the state's anti-pyramid scheme law, which defines enterprises as pyramid schemes if they offer the opportunity to earn compensation primarily from recruitment rather than retail sales. Nandita Bose of Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. U.S. Representative Jackie Speier sent a letter to President Joe Biden urging him to issue an executive order identifying white supremacy and violent extremism as a threat to national security. Speier, a top Democrat who chairs the House Armed Services Military Personnel Subcommittee, also pushed federal agencies to screen military recruits and those seeking government security clearances for ties to violent extremism on social media. In her letter, Speier said she is alarmed by this growing threat and that the U.S. government and the Department of Defense are not effectively screening service members. Social media platforms are frequently used by domestic terrorist groups to recruit members and plan violent attacks, yet social media is not reviewed during the military's accessions process or even as part of the background investigation process for security clearances, she said in her letter, which was also addressed to Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines. Earlier this month, Biden directed his administration to conduct a full assessment of the risk of domestic terrorism. The assessment will be carried out by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence in coordination with the FBI and the DHS. The White House did not immediately respond to a request seeking comment. Last week, DHS warned that the United States could face a heightened threat of domestic extremist violence for weeks from people angry that former President Donald Trump's election defeat and inspired by the storming of the U.S. Capitol on January 6. Like I said, when a hostile foreign power looked around America to find out who would be susceptible to brainwashing, from their point of view, they chose wisely. All right, let's get to our break. Oh, I should mention that Jackie Speier survived the Jonestown massacre attack, not as a member of the cult, but she was with the entourage who flew with Representative Leo Ryan, who went down there in a fact-finding mission to find out what the hell was going on, because constituents were complaining about gross problems. And what were those gross problems? Well, almost 1,000 people died. That's a big problem. And she crawled for a couple of nights through the jungle to get to another village after being shot several times. Okay, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
I'm Scientific American Assistant News Editor Sarah Lewin Fraser, and here's a short piece from the January 2021 issue of the magazine in the section called Advances, Dispatches from the Frontiers of Science, Technology, and Medicine. The article is titled Quick Hits, and it's a rundown of some non-coronavirus stories from around the globe. In Costa Rica, researchers embedded GPS devices in decoy sea turtle eggs to track poaching patterns. In their first field test, 5 of the 101 decoys, which had similar size, weight, and texture to real eggs, traveled significantly, potentially reaching consumers. In Latvia, DNA harvested from a 700-year-old public toilet in Riga, as well as a 600-year-old cesspit in Jerusalem, will help researchers examine how human microbiomes have evolved over time. Microbial DNA from both sites matches some species common in modern hunter-gatherers and some in today's city dwellers. In Antarctica, new analysis suggests a 50-million-year-old foot bone found on Seymour Island comes from a species of bird whose wingspan reaches 6.4 meters across. The researchers also attributed part of a large jawbone with tooth-like structures to the species. In a Madagascar garden, researchers found several Voltsko's chameleons, a rare species whose females can change from green to a vivid black, white, and blue when excited. The short-lived species had not been documented for more than 100 years, and no females were previously recorded at all. In Indonesia, new research shows that fluffy but venomous slow lorises frequently bite one another to settle territorial disputes, a rarity in venomous animals. In Australia, an enormous newfound coral reef off the continent's northern coast is taller than the Empire State Building, rising more than 500 meters above the seafloor. Considered part of the Great Barrier Reef, it is the first detached reef structure discovered there in 120 years. That was Quick Hits. I'm Sarah Lewin Fraser.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
In 2012 in the United States, about 317,000 motor vehicle crashes involved a large truck. 26,000 truck drivers and their passengers were injured in these crashes, and about 700 died. Trucker safety requires an alert, buckled-up, experienced driver with a reliable vehicle and a strong employer safety program. Seatbelts are the most effective way to prevent an injury or death in a motor vehicle crash, but in 2013, 1 in 6 drivers of large trucks didn't use their seatbelts. Employers can help truck drivers stay safe by committing to driver safety programs at the highest level of leadership, establishing and enforcing driver safety policies, including requiring everyone in the truck to buckle up, and addressing factors that contribute to crashes, such as drowsy and distracted driving. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Here are some constitutional provisions that could well apply to the recent storming of the Capitol. I'm Bill Newman. On January 6th, insurrectionists carrying out the wishes of President Donald Trump stormed the Capitol to prevent the Congress from confirming the Electoral College vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. The mob overpowered the Capitol Police, smashed windows, ransacked offices, carried the Confederate flag, and desecrated that historic building, brought nooses, handcuffs, and explosives inside, and built a scaffold with a noose outside. Some were screaming, "Hang Pence!" 6 people died, including 2 police officers. The Constitution contains 2 remedies for aiding and abetting an insurrection. The 14th Amendment, in relevant part, says, "No person shall hold any office under the United States who, having previously taken an oath as an officer of the United States to support the Constitution, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof." The Constitution also provides for impeachment of the president for treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, with only 2 potential punishments after conviction by the Senate: removal from office and disqualification to hold any future office. But that's not the end of the story, because the Constitution also says that, quote, "the party convicted by the Senate and punished shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law." The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
The Democratic Party establishment has a message for us progressives. Go away! That club of don't rock the corporate boat congressional leaders and their hired political operatives keep trying to purge progressive activists and policies from the party. Even when the candidates of these old-line forces win, as Joe Biden did, they can't seem to stop assailing grassroots progressives who supply the new ideas, energy, organizing, and votes that are the party's future. They're furious that we upstarts are making gains and pushing Democrats to be, well, Democrats. Just hours after polls closed on November 3rd, a group of timorous congressional Democrats joined in a game of pin the tail on progressives. They wailed that our demands for such egalitarian policies as Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, and criminal justice reform, quote, scares voters, and caused 8 centrist Democrats in swing districts to lose their House seats. One of the leading complainers, Representative Jim Clyburn, even insisted that those pushing a People's Democratic agenda would be the death of the Democratic Party. If, quote, we are going to run on Medicare for All, socialized medicine, we're not going to win, he proclaimed. Never mind that we taxpayers already provide socialized medicine for him and his colleagues, and never mind that he happens to be a top recipient of political cash from pharmaceutical profiteers. He is also wrong. Every single swing seat House Democrat who endorsed Medicare for All won re-election, tweeted Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on November 7th. Every single one. Indeed, of the 8 soft Dems who lost their House seats, all refused to back health care for all. This is Jim Hightower saying, polling shows that 72% of voters favor changing to a government-run health care plan. There's the party's future.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1848. That was the day the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed. It signaled the end of the Mexican-American War. The war began in May of 1846 when the United States sought to expand its annexation of Texas. It immediately became a partisan issue between pro- and anti-slavery forces. Southern Democrats and slave plantation owners favored war with Mexico. They hoped to undercut rising Northern industrial power with the expansion of slave territory. Whigs and Northern abolitionists opposed the war for the same reasons. After almost 2 years of fighting, the war ended. In exchange for $15 million, the United States gained 525,000 square miles of land. This territory included all or parts of Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. Mexico gave up all claims to Texas, and the Rio Grande was established as the border. The initial treaty promised protection of land, civil rights, and full citizenship for those Mexicans who stayed on the newly acquired territory. These guarantees were deleted from the final ratification. Expansionist aims reignited debates about the extension of slavery. The newly formed Free Soil Party gained traction with its campaign to limit, localize, and discourage slavery. Their banner read, "Free soil, free speech, free labor, and free men." Antagonisms were briefly tempered with the Compromise of 1850. This allowed California to be admitted as a free state. It also prevented the outlawing of slavery in the new territories. The slave trade was banned in the District of Columbia, but a new and more stringent fugitive slave law was enacted. Debates regarding expansion of slavery would rage on throughout the 1850s, culminating in the Civil War.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021. I'm Mark Boulanger. As the respect for human rights around the world is seeming to deteriorate, unions are fighting back. For example, Public Services International, the PSI, has released a booklet entitled A Practical Guide to Trade Union Action, International Human Rights Instruments. The PSI is the global body which represents public service unions at the world level. The booklet was produced in partnership with the German Labor Federation, DGB. A video to promote the booklet and its focus on 7 human rights instruments was produced.
PSI innovates once again with our launch of the Practical Guide to Union Action, International Instruments for the Defense of Human Rights, a guide to strengthen organized actions at the local, national, and global level. With this guide, we highlight 7 distinct instruments, starting with the Universal System of Human Rights of the United Nations. Based on the Universal Human Rights Declaration and on international human rights treaties adopted by the United Nations, the Universal System is composed of conventional and non-conventional mechanisms created to monitor compliance with international obligations. Another instrument is the Monitoring System for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Approved by the United Nations in 2015, Agenda 2030 defines 17 objectives for sustainable development, the SDGs, including specific objectives on work. All of the SDGs contain specific goals and measures that can be monitored by trade unions. Through the Union Cooperation Network for Development of the International Trade Union Confederation, unions are involved in the 2030 Agenda process, monitoring compliance, including, for example, by publishing parallel union reports. Next, the System for the Promotion and Implementation of the Organization for Cooperation and Economic Development, the OECDs. Guidelines for Multinational Enterprises. The guidelines for multinational enterprises adopted by the OECD are recommendations made by governments about the conduct of multinational companies in all of their activities and operations, wherever they occur, including throughout global value or production chains. In cases where violations of the recommendations occur, trade unions can register and follow up on formal complaints with national contact points. The fourth instrument, Global Framework Agreements. GFAs are agreements negotiated between global unions and multinational companies with the objective of recognizing and guaranteeing workers' rights globally throughout production chains. GFAs often apply to suppliers and subcontractors, as well as the company that has signed the agreement. Labor chapters in free trade agreements provide a set of mechanisms whereby the signatory parties, in this case governments, recognize their commitment to guaranteeing minimum labor standards as defined and agreed to at the ILO. Violations of these standards can lead to the creation of arbitrations panels, which may ultimately result in the suspension of benefits ceded in the free trade agreement itself. Labor safeguards of the multilateral development banks. International trade union action resulted in the creation of mechanisms and compliant procedures to guarantee respect for and protection of fundamental labor standards at the international finance institutions, banks that loan billions to governments and companies to finance investment projects. Lastly, but no less importantly, the International Criminal System for Crimes Against Humanity and Genocide. Crimes against humanity and genocide are understood in the international community to be serious aberrations that should be reported and denounced at any time in specific courts dedicated to these problems, including by trade unions.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. You can find our features and daily newscasts at radiolabor.net. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 41 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting only a high of around 45. Cloudy conditions with quite a bit of rain falling at the moment. Temperatures will be cooler than yesterday, and we have light rain this morning, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon. Winds out of the southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, looking for only about 1/10 of an inch until this afternoon. And then we're looking for rain showers that will evolve into a more steady rain overnight. Lows in the lows to mid-30s, and you know what that means. Winds light and variable, and expecting over 1/2 an inch of rain. Showers in the morning with highs in the mid-40s, then partly cloudy in the afternoon. Winds will remain light and variable, and we are in an active winter warning watch. So we got that going for us, which is nice because tomorrow night we're supposed to be in the mid to upper 20s. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon. Updated totals from the weekend have now pushed us over 7,501, with confirmed deceased now rising almost 7 to 101. Pollen right outside the window here in Rogue River proper is rated at none. The air quality index for the region is good at 26 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.04 inches. Visibility is down to 4 miles, and relative humidity is at 98%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that have been crowdsourced around the world by crowds who crowdsource their weather stations. London is London is 54 with haze. Paris is 58 and cloudy. Rome is 61 degrees and sunny. Kyiv is 24 and fair. Kabul is 40 degrees with winter smoke. Hong Kong is 61 and fair. Tokyo is 41 degrees and fair. Sydney, Australia is 66 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 and cloudy. And New York, New York is 31 degrees Fahrenheit, cloudy with a snow warning. You're going to get some more snow. Be prepared, as if you aren't already snowed in. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsourced because they crowdsource their weather stations. Anonymous Reuters staff brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Turkish police yesterday, Monday, detained 159 people over protests in Istanbul against Erdogan's appointment of a new rector at one of the country's top universities. Students at the Boğaziçi University in Istanbul began their protests nearly a month ago, as reported here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, saying the appointment of Melih Bulu as rector was undemocratic. Teachers at the university have also protested his swearing in. Protesters chanting slogans as "Police get out" and "Universities are ours." I think there's something missing in the translation, but they clashed and scuffled with the police. In a statement, the Istanbul governor's office said 159 people had later been detained for not ending the demonstrations in front of the Boğaziçi University despite warnings, and added that an investigation had been launched. Earlier, more than 100 police gathered at the main entrance of the campus. They allowed university students to enter, checking their IDs, but told others to leave, including several lawmakers, mainly from the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Manuel Ruda of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A social media death threat aimed at an 11-year-old environmental activist has roused outrage in Colombia, a nation where attacks on social leaders are common and threats are taken seriously. Colombian officials said they are investigating the death threat against Francisco Vera, and President Ivan Duque recently promised in a television appearance that his government would find the bandits behind the Twitter message. For his part, the boy said he will continue to lead environmental campaigns and urged other young people to use social media to support causes they believe in. Vera, who has drawn comparisons to teenage Swedish environmental activist Greta Thunberg, got together with 6 friends from school about 2 years ago and marched to the main park of his hometown in Valletta, carrying cardboard signs and chanting slogans about climate change under the supervision of his abuela, Grandma. His Guardians for Life group now has at least 11 chapters and more than 200 members across Colombia. It planted hundreds of trees last year and petitioned Colombia's government to ban single-use plastics. And he spoke before the country's Congress last year. On January 15th, the boy received a gruesome, profanely worded threat from a Twitter account using a false name in response to a video he posted urging Duque to improve internet access for children studying from home during the pandemic. That is deplorable. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme aux langues de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.